Welcome back, coders, and keep on coding and never give up. So, in this tutorial, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk about React Memo. React Memo. Now, that if you have never heard of it, you may not understand what it means. But React Memo. So we use React Memo. When you use React Memo, it will cause React to skip rendering a component if its props have not changed. So maybe if I have a component, let's say I have like a car component, right? And then I am rendering out multiple components in my function. Maybe the render function is rendering out, let's say, some multiple car components. Let's give all these multiple car components. This is what it's rendering out. And probably each component has maybe, let's give an attribute of type. Each component has an attribute of type. This component has an attribute of type. The next component has an attribute of type. The next one has type. The next one has type. The next one has type. All of them have an attribute of type. So usually when I'm returning this, probably it's in my return. This is just some simple pseudocode. Probably it may not look like this, but if it's in my return, I'll give it it's in my return, and then let's say it's in a wrapper, my wrapper here. It's in my wrapper. It's in my wrapper. All these components are in my wrapper. Let me tab this. This is not how you do React code, but I'm just giving a demonstration. So if it's in my wrapper, so this is what is rendering. If the attribute of this one changes, what React does, it will re-render everything inside here, meaning that it will take more time. So if I have a really, really complex application, Memo, you may not see its effect or its use if you are doing simple applications. But if you have a really, really complex application, it can help you to improve performance. It means that if maybe I wrapped each of these components in Memo, it means that if I am returning it and its attributes have not changed, React will not re-render it. React will only re-render those ones whose attributes have changed. That's if I use Memo. So Memo, if I'm having a really complex application, it will help me to improve performance. Meaning that if I change maybe my name in maybe a form, it should not be able to re-render everything, right? In my code. But how does this work? How does this work? So let me show you how to implement Memo. So to implement Memo, we're going to import some things. So what we're going to import, we're going to have to import some things. But the things we'll have to import, we're going to first have to create we're going to have to first create a component. So let's come here to your source, new components, create a new file, and then the new file, what you're going to save the new file is as todos.js. Todos.js. So after saving your file todos.js, you can come here in your index.js, and then you're going to import that file. So the file you're going to import will be import todos. I want to define that component and then export it so that I can be able to import it. I'm going to say todos from. And open /dash components /todos. So that's what I'm going to import. Now let's define our todos component code. So define our todos. It's going to be a const. Define my component. Todos will be a const. Then const will using an arrow function. I forgot here my anchor bracket. After that, the properties is going to be will just be todos. To be the property to take. Then I'm going to console.log something. The one that I want to console.log will be console.log. What is going to log is just child render. Child render. It's going to be helpful somewhere there. I will explain why it's helpful, or you can just see why it is helpful when I'm done writing the rest of the code. So then I'm going to return some HTML code. The HTML code I'm going to return. First put in my wrapper. JSX you need to put in your wrapper. Then it's going to have a h2 tag, which will just define my todos. h2. My todos, and the h2 tag will just say my todos. Then I'm going to use the map function. So in the map function, I'm going to say todos, which is going to be an array. The to-dos that is going to be passed is going to be an array. Then in the array it will be .map, to-dos.map. Then in the map function, remember the map function requires a function for me to pass in, so I'll say I'll pass in a function for it. So the function which I'll pass in should take in to do, and then an index. So after taking in the to do and an index, then I will return something. I'll return a paragraph. Return a paragraph. The paragraph should have a key, and that key of the paragraph would be the index, and then the key. Then inside the paragraph, I'm going to put in my to do, and I can close my paragraph. Simple as that. Then I can now export my to do. So I'll say export default to do's. I'll save, probably terminate here. Save, terminate here. I'll save. So this is my to do component. So after defining my to do component, I can come to my index.js and then define my app component. So in my index.js, to define my app component, I'll just say const app will equal to that. Then I'm going to now import something. I'm going to import my use state hook to help me keep track of the state since I'm using a function component. So I'll say use state. Then in my use state, I will put import, then use state. Then the use state, I'm importing it from React. Then after that, I'm going to define my states here. So the defined states I'm going to define will be count. I want to define the count state, then set count. Then after defining my count, I'm going to say use state, then the initial count in the use state. The initial count variable should be 0. Then I'm going to define another state. So I'll say const. The state will be to have my to-dos. Then to have the function to-dos to help me update my to-dos. Then I'll say use state. And the use state here will just be, the value here will just be an array of to do 1, to do 2. Save. Now I need to return my to-dos. So I'll just put return, open my brackets. Then inside here, my return, first define my my wrapper. Then inside my wrapper, I'll define my to-dos component which I already imported. And then close it. But my to-dos component has a prop to-dos. And then the to-dos which I'll pass it will be my to-dos, which I already defined here as my state to-dos. Then after that, I'm going to define another division here. This one I'm just going to paste it here to save time. So I'll have my division. In my division, I'll have the count, which will put for me here count. Then I'll have a button, which will increment this count. But this button has an event handler, which is increment. So I need to define the increment. The increment what? I need to define the increment function. So to define the increment function, I'll go const increment. Const increment will equal to const increment, which will equal to that. Then I'll start defining my increment function. So in the increment function, I'll set count. Then I'll pass in a function so that I can be able to access the previous count. And then that function will simply return for me the previous count plus 1. Then I can save, so that will do it. So if I come back here to my everything should look okay. What's it saying? Saying unexpected token here. Unexpected token. Let's see. An unexpected token here. I can remove it, save, come back here. Everything should be working now. So I can remove this contact. Then come here. I did not render out my what? My app component. So here I need to render out my app component. So render out my app component, come back, everything should be working. I have my to-dos there. When I click it, you can see it's incrementing count. It's incrementing the count as I wanted. Now, when you click the increment button, the to-do component re-renders. So every time I click this button, I'll give this example, this button, every time I click it 9, 10, 11, the whole of this return is recalled and recalled. It means that these to-dos here, not to-do has changed. So every time I call it, the to-do it's re-rendered. So it's taking processing power. It's re-rendered, it's re-rendered, it's re-rendered. So it's taking processing power. So every time this to-do takes more processing power, it's taking more processing power. If the application is really complicated, it will slow down the application. But the to-do is not being affected. So to make sure that React does not re-render our to-do, that's where Memo comes in handy. So now, to use Memo is quite simple. What you do, go to your to-dos component, whichever component you don't want to be re-rendered every time. If you don't want it to be re-rendered. You only want it to be re-rendered if its state changes. So to do that, you can say import. Then what you can import is Memo. You can import Memo from React. So after importing Memo from React, to make sure that this to-do component does not re-render every time if its state has not changed, what you do, you wrap the to-dos, as you're exporting it, you wrap the to-dos in Memo. So you wrap the to-dos in Memo. So after doing this, it implies that these to-dos will not be re-rendered. It will not be re-rendered. Now to see the effect, let me see console.log. Let me come here, render. Can go here, inspect. And then after inspecting console, so then I can click. So let me first remove the memo here to see the effect. Let's remove the memo here. So let me remove the memo. Then I save. I come back here on the browser and I click to do. So every time you say I click count, the to-do is being re-rendered. And every time the to-do is re-rendered, it console.logs child render. So every time I click here, the to-do is being re-rendered. So you can see here that it's being re-rendered. Every time I click 10 times, it has been rendered 12 times and the count is 12. But if I come here to Memo, and then I put it here in Memo, and I save, and I come back here to my browser, since the to-do has been re-rendered, the first time the application is called, the to-do is rendered and child rendered is what? It's console.log. But this time if I click plus, as I'm incrementing, you can see that the to-do is not being rendered because its state has not changed. Every time I click plus, it's not being rendered because the state has not changed. That's why it's no longer console.logging the render. So that's how Memo works. So it just helps you in performance if your application is really, really, really large. It can help you speed up your applications. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.